Okay, so before we start the new notes for the 5.3 notes, I need you to have your foldable out, and we're going to do this first section for slope-intercept form because I totally forgot to have us start this when we were talking about slope-intercept form. Okay, so this just kind of outlines the three different forms that we're going to talk about. We've talked about slope-intercept form. We'll do point-slope today, and then we'll do standard form tomorrow. And so really, they're just three different forms that kind of help you determine three different things. Well, not three different things, but you use them for three different reasons. Okay, slope-intercept form is really helpful to graph. Okay, so when we are going to graph an equation that's in slope-intercept form, okay, so we're in the slope-intercept form one, it should look like this. Our steps to graph are to first graph the y-intercept. So we graph the y-intercept, and then we use slope to find more points. Okay? So if I'm going to graph this, okay, I'm going to graph my y-intercept first, which is -3, so that's my b. So I'm going to graph -3, so I graphed my y-intercept. And then I'm going to use slope to find more points. So remember, this would be up to right 1, because when I do, these are both up and right are both positive, so 2 divided by 1 is 2. Okay, so I go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. And then you draw your line. Okay. And remember, you technically only have to have 3 points, but the more points you have, the easier it is to draw a nice, straight, pretty line. Okay? Now, the way that we recognize slope-intercept form, one way is if y is by itself on one side of the equal sign. And then the other way is there's no parentheses. Because as you'll see below, there's parentheses on point slope form. So if there's no parentheses, that hints us to maybe it's slope intercept form. And then if we know y is by itself, then that's slope intercept form. Okay, so parts of the equation, we have m, which we've talked about, that's my slope. Okay. We have b, which is a constant. Okay, and that is my y-intercept. And then we're actually going to go up and add one more thing to m, that is the coefficient of x. Always the coefficient of x. Okay. And then that x and the y, like if we knew what x and y were, that's a point on the line. But remember, when we're writing it in slope-intercept form, we only fill in m and b. Okay. Okay, so that's it for slope-intercept form, because we've really talked about that. Now I'm going to flip over real quick into this key concept. Actually, we're going to go up to the learner's question, and we're going to say, our objective is I can write an equation in slope-intercept and point-slope form. Okay, so my learner's question is going to be simple. How do I write an equation in point-slope form? Okay, and it's not as hard as it looks, I promise. Okay, so point-slope form is this right here. Okay, now your paper may have a hole in it, so if you don't have this, if there's a piece missing, make sure you write it in. But we're also going to write it on our notes right here. It says the point-slope form of the equation of a non-vertical line through the given point x1, y1 with a slope m is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, now on your test, I'm going to give you these three forms, but I'm not going to tell you which one is which. So you need to know that that's point slope form, okay? So we're going to look, now we're going to flip to the part of our point slope form foldable. Okay, now we're not going to do the graph yet because we'll get to that on the back, but we're going to talk about how we recognize point slope form. Okay, so there, x and y are on opposite sides of the equation. Okay, x and y are on opposite sides of the equal signs. Okay, or either x is in parentheses or y is not by itself, or both. Okay, because our point might have a 0 in it, and if it has a 0 in it, and I'll show you what that might look like, you wouldn't necessarily have y minus something if if the y coordinate of your point was 0, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay, for the parts of our equation, okay, we have m. Okay, that's still the slope of the equation, slope of the line. Okay, and then x1, y1. Okay, that's a point on the line, and that's given to us. Okay, that will be given to you. Okay? Okay, so now we're going to go back to this. We're going to do example number 1. Okay, we're going to write an equation in point slope form. Okay, so there's my form. I'm not going to rewrite it again. Okay, but here's my x1, my y1. My slope is m, and then I literally just plug that stuff in. So I have y minus, my y1 is -3, make sure you pay attention to that, equals 2 for m, and I still have x, and then my x1 is 4. Now, I still don't want those two things to be next to each other, that subtraction sign and that negative, so I need to change that to +3. So y plus 3 equals 2 times x minus 4. Okay, so that's all you have to do for that one. That's pretty easy. Okay, go ahead and do A and B on the U-try. Okay, example number 2. Okay, now it's asking us to write an equation. Give me just a second. I'm going to adjust my camera here a little bit. Okay, it's asking us to write an equation in point slope form using 2 points. So this time, instead of having 1 point in slope, I need to find the slope first and then use one of those points to write the equation. Okay, so I'm going to do my x1, y1, x2, y2. Then I have to find slope using that slope formula, which I hope you guys are all comfortable with. Okay, y2 is 4, y1 is -2, x2 is 3, and x1 is 0. So 4 minus -2, well, that's the same as adding, so 4 plus 2 is 6. 3 minus 0 is 3, so 6 divided by 3 is 2. So there's my slope. Okay. Now, I can write 2 different point slope forms with this point slope equation with this because I have 2 points. I'm going to show you how to do both. Okay, so I'm going to flip my paper this way so that it's a little bit easier for me to write. Okay, so we can use either point. It doesn't matter. Either way is correct. Okay, so I can use this one, which would be -2 as my y1, and so my m is always going to be 2, and then I have x minus 0. Well, I need to simplify that, okay? So right here, that becomes plus, so I'd have y plus 2 equals 2 times x. You don't necessarily have to put the x in parentheses because it's x minus 0. So that goes back to here where we say either x is in parentheses or y is not by itself or both. So here y isn't by itself, but I don't necessarily have to write that x in parentheses, but I still know that that is point slope form because I would know that my x1 is 0. Okay, now with B, the second one that I could do is y minus 4 because there's my y. Okay, and I know these are labeled as y2 and x2, but it doesn't really matter. You can use either point. Okay, then my 2 is my slope, and then I have x minus 3. You just, like I said, it doesn't matter that when we found slope, that this was x2 or y2. Okay, it doesn't matter that it's 2 instead of 1 like the equation has. So when we're looking at the equation, it has y1 and x1. It's just a point on the line. So if I'm saying that these 2 points right here are on the line, I can use either of those to write the equation. Okay? Okay, let's do letter B. Okay, so I gotta find my slope because they didn't give me slope. Okay, so I have to do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so this is x1, y1, x2, y2. 8 minus 7 over 8 minus 4. 8 minus 7 is 1. 8 minus 4 is 4. So there's my slope. And then I could have y minus 7. So there's my y1. There's my point, y coordinate that I'm plugging in. Okay, my slope is 1/4. And then I have x, and then I've got to use the 4 because that's the y value. I use the y value of 7, so I have to use the x value of 4 when I'm plugging in, like that. Okay, so that's one way. Or I could do it with the other point. Y minus 8 equals 1/4 x minus 8, because they were both x and y were 8 on that point. So when you write these, you may have a different answer than someone else because you may use a different point than the other person. Okay? Okay, go ahead and do this, you try. Okay? Okay, we are going to flip back to the steps to graph for a 4-point slope. Okay? So the first thing you have to do is identify and graph the point. Okay, so first thing you have to do is you have to identify what the point is and graph it. Okay, and then you use slope to find more points. Okay, just like we did with slope-intercept form. Okay, now I'm going to rewrite my point-slope form right here so that we can kind of identify the point here. Okay, now in order for me to just pull the numbers out, it needs to look exactly like this. Okay, so when I'm looking at what my xy point is going to be, okay, if I'm looking along here, there's the y, I have a subtraction sign, which means my y1 is 3. Okay, so my y that I'm going to use for the point is going to be 3. Okay, my m is -2, so that means my line should be descending, right? It needs to go like this. And then I have the x, and then I have a plus sign instead of a negative sign, instead of a subtraction sign. So what that means is that my x1 was actually -1. It wasn't 1, okay, because it changed it from being subtraction to addition, which means that when I plugged in the x1, it was actually a -1. So that when I combine that subtracting a negative, that's where the addition sign came from. Okay, so my x value for my point is actually -1, not +1, because my form is x minus x1, and in the actual equation, it gave me +1. Okay, so that's the point we're going to graph. Okay, so I need to go on my x is -1, my y is 3. Okay, and then when I'm going to graph this, I'm going to go down 2 and right 1. Because down is negative, but right is positive, so negative divided by a positive gives me a negative. So down 2, right 1. Down 2, right 1. I'm going to go again just to give myself an extra point. Okay, and then I'm going to draw that line. Okay. So that's how you graph. You figure out what the point is, and then you use slope to find more points. Okay, so on example number 3 on here, okay, we have to first figure out what the point is. Okay, so I'm going to write my point slope form again just to help me. Okay, so as I'm going along here, y is good. Oh no, I don't have a subtraction sign, I have a plus sign. Okay, which means that when I plugged in that point, it was actually subtracting a -2, which means the y value of my coordinate is actually a -2, not a positive, because this is subtraction, so the only way for this to actually become addition is if my 2 is negative. Okay? Then we know my m is 2/3. It's kind of small on the video, but you have it on your paper. And then I have the x, subtraction, and then 3, which means my x value is 3. Okay? So, I have 3, -2. Okay, that's my point. Now I know that there's a dot on the origin, just ignore it. Okay, so 3, -2 is right here. And then my slope is 2/3. Now, we're going to see if, we're just going to have to estimate because I'm going to end up going off the graph, and that's okay. Okay, so, and this is positive, so up to 3 right. Okay, so up to right 3, and I'm going to estimate that that's there. Okay, and then I'm going to have to go the other way, so I'm going to have to go down and left. So 2 down, 3 to the left. So there's my 3 points. And I'm going to take my handy dandy notebook, just kidding, my foldable, and draw a nice line. Okay, so there's it graphed in point slope form. Okay, okay, go ahead and do the U-try number 3. Okay, example number 4. Now we're going to write an equation in point slope form, okay, which is what we did before, only this time it's from a graph. Okay, so I still need slope and I still need a point. Okay, so I need to find out what the slope is. So I'm going to go from this point to this point, so I'm going to go down 2, which is -2, and to the right 2, which is +2. So if I do -2 divided by 2, that's -1. Okay, so my slope is -1, and then you can pick either point. Okay, you can pick -1, 3, or 1, 1. I'm going to pick 1, 1 just because I like positive numbers. Okay, so then my equation would be y minus, remember it's, I'm going to rewrite it up here, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, so my y1 is going to be 1, my m is -1, and then I have x minus 1. Okay, or you might have, if you use -1 and 3, if I do x1, y1, okay, y minus 3 equals -1 times x minus -1, which would, this would end up being plus. So this would be y minus 3 equals -1 times x plus 1, like that. Okay, either one is right, this one or this one. Okay, now you can leave the 1 off if you want to, just make sure you have a negative sign. Okay, now when you go to do this U-try, you can use, I'm going to give you the points -2, 2, and 2, 4. So use one of those points to write your equation. I don't want 15 different possibilities, so use one of those 2 points when you write your equation. Okay, do the U-try.